Ladies and gentlemen, Dale Furtwängler. His presentation is entitled A Relationship Builder. In true contrarian fashion, Dale is not only going to show us how manipulation can build stronger relationships, he's going to show us how to use manipulation effectively. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dale Furtwängler.
Thank you, Dad. Good to see everyone this morning. We're going to talk about manipulation and whether or not it can be a relationship builder. And before we get into that, I want to let you know that this program is designed to be interactive. So when you see the questions on the slides, they're not rhetorical. I'm really looking for your input, your insights, your experience, because I can assure you that one of the things that I know with absolute certainty is the collective wisdom in this room is much greater than mine. So when you share your insights and your experiences, we're all going to benefit a great deal more. All right, is that fair? So, first question. When you feel like you're being manipulated, how do you feel?
Taken advantage of.
Taken advantage of.
Triggered.
Sorry, triggered? Triggered? Pardon me?
Rebellious.
Rebellious? I'm sorry?
Dirty.
Dirty. Oh. Yeah, pretty negative connotation, right? Yeah. But is manipulation intrinsically evil? No?
Talking about like a high salesman, sales tactics, or well, wouldn't you rather? Don't you think that manipulation is negative?
So sales manipulation.
Leading the question.
Uh-huh.
But I think there's also a manipulation that is truer. Manipulating by them getting to know you personally.
Okay.
I'm done anyway. So there's always manipulation.
Okay. So there's all manipulation. Steve, let's get the microphone back to.
Yeah, I think as parents, we practice it almost every day, right? We're leading our kids in a certain way, and we use what could be considered manipulation sometimes to get them to do the things that are in their best interest.
Yeah, and sometimes it works the other way, doesn't it? You wonder who's training who. Yes, Brian.
Isn't persuasion manipulation on some level? And I wouldn't say persuasion is necessarily bad, but trying to get someone to do what you want them to do. If it's maybe a positive thing, it's not necessarily bad.
Okay, so it can be positive, not necessarily a bad thing. Any other thoughts? No, it's not intrinsically evil. I'm sure that there isn't a person in this room who, upon seeing a toddler reaching for a pot on the stove, wouldn't do everything in your power to convince them not to do that. Not just now in this instance, but ever again, right? So that's the manipulation that we're talking about that has a very positive impact. So what determines whether or not manipulation is good? I'm sorry, Kim?
Did you hear her? She said safety issues, but I was going to say the intent.
The intent.
Yes. So is it self-serving? Is it good for both? Is it a win-win?
Okay, so is it self-serving or is it a win-win for those things? I'm sorry, Cynthia.
I agree with what Kim had to say. I shouted out safety issues, but I also like that notion of intent.
Okay, all right. Other thoughts, Brian?
I wonder if maybe transparency is part of it. I mean, if you're trying to secretly manipulate someone rather than being more open about you're trying to get them to accept your point of view or whatever, maybe.
Yeah, so if there's an openness to the exchange, then it doesn't feel negative. There's a very positive vibe that comes out of it. Yeah. Anyone else?
Hey, Dale,
Anybody
can
from
I
the
chime
Zoom
in?
group?
Yeah, can I chime in from the remote world? Can you hear me? People can hear me. This is Tom. There's a guy named Dave D, whom I like very much, a marketing expert, and he makes the distinction between unethical manipulation and what he calls ethical persuasion. And he said the distinction is intent.
Mm-hmm.
If your intent is to serve clients and provide honest and real value, then the business of persuading them, or in the case of how you're talking about it, manipulating them to move forward, you're actually offering them a gift. You're providing true value. If you're selling them snake oil, that's unethical.
Right. Yeah. Very good. Yeah. Thanks for that, Tom. Any other thoughts? Oops. So, yes. Do you have a microphone?
Hi, I'm Therese from the coffee room. I've been a sales professional all my life, and the first little company I worked for, Apple, when they were brand new and I was brand new, we were very low key, and the whole point was to guide the customer through the decision-making process like a teacher. So as a teacher, I don't feel like I'm manipulating. I'm just helping you make decisions and based on solid information. So that will involve sometimes when I'm going to be saying, well, do you really want to have that happen? Do you really want your office to be a mess, or do you really want your accounting, to get an audit? No, I wouldn't say negative stuff like that, but you do guide them. And I don't see that as manipulative. I see that as being a teacher. So my motto is all selling is teaching, and all teaching is selling, because as a teacher, you sell ideas. So that's.
Yeah. And Apple's an excellent example, because I know when I went to the Apple store the first time, the person that was the salesperson was saying, or asked me, what do you use most? And I told him Word, and he said, oh, well, look at this on Pages. And he said, do you use graphics? And he did a demonstration, and it sold me just like that. But what his question was, what do you use most? I want to make sure this is relevant to you and important to you. So again, he was manipulating the process and my thinking to help me clarify my own mind what was going to be of greatest benefit to me. So I agree with all of you. Intent is really what determines whether or not manipulation is positive or negative. All right. Next question. What techniques do you use? Because we're all in business, we all sell, we all market, right? So what techniques do you use to manipulate others' thinking? Bill, do you have a microphone? Yeah, there you go.
Is this on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Good quality, open-ended questions.
Oh, good quality opening questions.
Open-ended questions.
Open-ended questions. Yeah, Karen? Stories. Anyone else?
I use rapport quite a bit in negotiations or whatever. Just try to build a relationship and build on that.
Rapport, is that what you said? Yeah. Okay. Anybody in the Zoom group? Okay, well, why does it work? Bill, why does that process work for you?
Because I think people would rather hear their own ideas than yours.
Okay, rather deal with their own ideas than yours. That's why the questions work. Karen?
If you can engage them, is the story relate to them?
Okay, so the stories allow them to relate to the experience that you're sharing with them. Okay. And I'm sorry, who was the? Oh, Brian. Yes.
Yeah,
On the-
rather than, if you take an adversarial approach, people are trying to push against you naturally. But if you build on your rapport, then you're kind of on, looking at things from the same point of view and on the same side.
Okay, very good. Yeah. So when you're trying to build rapport with them and a connection with them, then there's no defensiveness that arises out of that. And what kind of reaction do you get to your approach? Bill?
I think people love it. I mean, people would much rather do the talking than to listen to you talk. So engaging them in a good question that makes sense to them, they almost always welcome it.
Right. They like to be heard, right? We like to be heard.
Unmitigated success.
Unmitigated success with the rapport. And Karen with the stories?
I think they can respond with their stories as well, responding with their stories.
Okay,
So there's a
so
conversation.
They respond with their stories and often affirm what you have experienced as well. Yes, I mean,
Relief that I'm not a used car salesman. I'm not pushing something on them that they don't need. By intelligently guiding them through the decision making, they're so relieved to have a teacher and not somebody who's promoting something that might be harmful or too expensive.
yeah. So the result you get is somebody, they feel like you're helping them find the right solution for them as opposed to selling them something that they may or may not want. Okay, good. Any other thoughts? Okay. Anybody on the Zoom? Okay, I'm going to share with you my approach, and it's the same as Bill's, the questioning process. And here are some of the questions that I use and why I use them. First question, is it true that? And I find that when I ask that question, what it does is it enables me to get insights into where they are in their thought process, what their values are, what their beliefs are, what their experiences have been. And that gives me a context then for follow-up questions so that I can guide them just as the Apple person did with me when I was buying my first Apple computer, help guiding me to the solution that really is best for me, that meets my particular needs. So it enables me to get that context or to do that more quickly and more effectively. The second question that I use is, how would that work when? So I use this instead of disagreeing with them. Instead of saying, oh, that'll never work, it's just going to create all kinds of resistance. I'll ask, how would that work in this situation? Or how would that work when? And what I'm getting them to do is to look at something that I feel like they've overlooked. And if I'm correct in that, and they're now seeing things in a different light, then I'm manipulating their thinking and they're coming to a different conclusion on that. Now, having said that, all of these questions have to be used in the context of exploration. I have to be open, because somebody mentioned openness earlier. I have to be open to the fact that it's I who's missing some information, who's overlooking something. Because if I'm not open to that, then my questions can appear as much a challenge as any statement that I might make. All right. The third question, what would happen if? So instead of issuing instructions, Karen, instead of doing ABC, why don't you do ACB? Which is going to create defensiveness because I'm in essence saying to Karen, you're doing it wrong, right? But if I ask her, what would happen if instead of doing ABC, you do ACB? All right. And she can think through the process, right? What if? So again, an exploratory question. What if? And I can bring up any situation, and I'm getting them to rethink their position. rethink the conclusions that they've reached. Or I can ask them, how could we accomplish this? You know, or how can we blend these two things, these two goals that seem disparate? Well, how can we do that? So these are questions that have exploratory tone and help us reshape each other's thinking in the process. Now, the reason that questions work so well is that there are two elements there: discovery and validation. When people are rethinking their position, what they're doing is they're discovering an alternative. They're discovering a different solution, a different alternative that they can explore. And as they're doing that, they're validating what their conclusion is with their own experiences. So in essence, I can't persuade anyone of anything. They have to persuade themselves, and that's what's happening. They're persuading themselves through reevaluating what the issue is by virtue of the questions that I've asked. All right? Share with you a client reaction. And this is a client that I saw every month for 13 years, but somewhere in that process, I was using this approach with her, which I had done numerous times before. And she said, oh, I see where you're going, but keep going. I don't want to miss anything. You know, so anyway, it's very positive reaction. Even though she knew what I was doing, she was excited about the fact that she saw the direction it was headed, and also that we were going to, that she wanted to make sure she wasn't going to miss anything in the process. Couple quick questions. Do you feel like I've manipulated your thinking this morning? And has it affected our relationship at all? Okay, great. So if we want to use manipulation in a way that helps us build relationships, there are two things to keep in mind. The intent has to be to help and benefit them as well as ourselves, and we want to ask questions. With that, I'm going to leave it to any questions or comments. Yes.
Do you think the current social media environment is really destroying the ability to do this? Because I see it's all just talking points back at each other. No questioning of your position, no talking about a position. It's all just, you know, talking points.
Yeah, you know, I think that it may have diminished this. I don't think it's ever going to kill it, because I think there are too many people who realize the effectiveness of it, and too many people in terms of personal relationships, one-on-one, outside the social media, they're going to get so much resistance if they don't use something, approach somewhat similar to this, and they're going to be less successful, and they're going to have to adapt in order to get what they need from that. So I don't think it's ever going to go away. Bill?
Dale, one thing that always happens, and I'm never quite sure about why. For some reason, even if you're a good questioner, when somebody disagrees with you, we always tend to want to explain to them why they should agree with us.
Right.
Right. Rather than asking questions and continuing the questioning. It is so much more powerful to ask a question around the resistance rather than trying to explain it.
Absolutely. I agree. Kim?
Well, two things. One, just shout out to Bill, because he totally did this when I walked in this morning. He asked me a question and it actually got interrupted. We didn't answer. I didn't answer it. And then he followed up with me and came back around and got the conversation going again. So good job on that.
Thank you.
And then just a comment about the social media and the talking points. I think that the people that do that also do that in person. To some degree. So there, you know, I think people that ask, I know people that ask good questions online that's, you know, really building relationships and helping people that are on this side or that side kind of come together. So it can be done online too.
It can be.
It's
Oh,
a
absolutely.
learning process, kind of
Yeah.
like what Karen was saying. The conversations are the same online and offline.
Yes, this lady behind you, Mark. I think.
This is just a little personal story. I was working with a spiritual counselor when my marriage was not going so well. And my husband and I had different views on how to set limits and boundaries for one of the children. And I came home from a trip to see my sister in a hospice care, and all the discipline I'd set up fell apart. And rather than saying, how can you stay married to that? What she said, or, you know, do you really, you know, you shouldn't be, you know, married to this man. She said, do you want to partner with that? And that gave me permission to do what I thought I would never do, which was to say, this isn't working out. I thought it was my job to make it work out. But do you want to partner? I realized that I couldn't partner with that. And that's something I'll never forget, because it was just, you know, a simple 5-word question.
Yeah, yeah. And again, what it did is allowed you to consider what you really wanted in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even know that that was even a question. And we all lived happily ever after, by the way.
Well, that's great. That's great. Glad to hear it.
Thank you, Dale.
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you very much.